The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
Now, I have a very dear friend. His name is Rabbi Ron Yitzchak Eisenman. He's the Rav of the Avos Yisrael Shul in Pesach. He and I know each other for many, many years. I've done many, many brisin in his shul. Now my son is a mile in Pesach. He does the brisin there as well. And he told me an amazing story. He said back in March 27 in the year 2002, it was Erev Pesach here in New York and New Jersey. Now, of course, already it was nighttime in Eretz Yisrael. And on the radio, we heard a terrible, terrible newscast that in Eretz Yisrael, at the Seder in Netanya, there was a terrorist bombing and Yidden were killed. Now, here in America, it was still Erev Yontif. And he heard about it. He was devastated. He was crying. Never Yidden killed at the Seder in Netanya. How horrible is that? And he was thinking, as a Rav, he has to go to the Avos Yisrael Shul, and he has to be able to tell the Tzibur. Well, certainly they will have known about it by then, but he's got to tell the Tzibur that we got to make Yontif. We got to say Hallel. How are you going to do that on such a horrendous news that Yidden were killed at a Seder? He said he was cleaning the lettuce and preparing for the Seder together with his wife and family, crying, the tears streaming down his cheeks. And he was thinking, what is he going to say to anyone? How do you bring in Yontif like this? And then he was walking to shul. And he remembered a story. Listen to this story. You got to remember the story the rest of your life. He said he remembered a couple years earlier he was in New Square. He was by the Rebbe Rabbi Twersky. Should live and be well. And there was never Chlavaya of a square chassid. And I guess Rabbi Eisenman had known that chassid, and that's why he went to the Levaya. And Rabbi Twersky, the Rebbe, was in the shul where the Levaya was, and he spoke a few words, very meaningful, about that beloved chassid. Very sad. And then everybody walked down to the cemetery where the gentleman was buried. Rabbi Eisenman told me that he came back to the shul later that afternoon to daven mincha ma'ariv. And he noticed after ma'ariv that there was some hustle and bustle going on in the shul. And there was actually going to be a chuppah there. A young couple was getting married, and the chuppah was being set almost the exact same place where the coffin had been a couple hours before, where the Rebbe had spoken. And after the chuppah was finished, the Rebbe went over to the Chassan Kala and wished a mazel, very warm bracha, and very, very heartsick, and it was very special. And he thought about that. Just hours before, the Rebbe had been crying, so broken because of the passing of that chassid, and now he was able to give a very, very warm bracha to the Chassan and Kala with a great smile. And he said, everybody has to be the square Rebbe. Everybody has to be the square Rebbe. He said to the people, when he thought about this, he said, our children, our wives, many of us have prepared for the Seder a very, very long time. Now this year, of course, the preparation was a bit curtailed. But the point is, we've been waiting for this Yontif for a long time. And you got to be like the square Rebbe, that no matter what the situation is, you got to identify with the moment and bring out the best of that moment. And that's what he said to everyone. And he told me he didn't know if it resonated with everyone in the shul until the next morning. He said a fellow came over to him, and usually this was a less of a serious person, always had something funny to say. But now the guy was very serious. And he came over to Rabbi Eisenman and he said, Rebbe, I want you to know You saved my Seder last night. I had one of the greatest Sidurim ever. He said, when I came home, I was not in the mood to make a Seder. Because I have an aunt and uncle in Netanya. I know they go to one of the hotels. Of course, I had no idea if they were in that hotel. And I was not in the mood at all to perform a Seder. But my little girl was standing on a chair. She wanted to sing the Manishtana. And she had prepared for it for a long time. And I thought about what you said. And I looked at my wife. I looked at my mother-in-law. And I turned to my daughter and I said, my sweet child, sing for us the Manishtana. It's the sweetest song in the world. And she got up and she sang it. And I cried, my wife cried, my mother-in-law cried. But she had the greatest smile because she had done that Manishtana with pride. And he said to Rabbi Eisman, it was only because you gave us that insight that I was able to perform the Seder. And we had one of the most beautiful Sidurim. And that's what Rabbi Eisman is said to that community and said to me. And he said, no matter what your pekel is, and many of us do have a pekel, no question. Many in Klal Yisrael have a pekel. Just remember, when it comes to the Seder, you got to be the square Rebbe. What a great insight. We got to make the most of it.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org